Hello everyone, that manga kid here to do a wrap up of the readathon that I participated in this past week. It was hosted by Laura over on Manga Hoarder and her sister Jen from Shelf Space Fleeting. Both channels will be in the description. I had a lot of fun participating in this one. There were 7 challenges, and I did complete all of them multiple times pretty much because of how much manga I read. I'm going to try and remember to mention the challenges as I show you the books, but honestly, there's a lot to get through and I'm probably just going to forget. But I read 57 volumes of manga this week, and that is a lot more than I was planning on reading. It just sort of happened that way. So I'm just going to get right into it. On the 17th, I started off with I Am a Hero Omnibus 6. This is containing volumes 11 and 12 of the manga series. And this is, if you don't know, a zombie apocalypse manga that follows the protagonist is a very mentally unstable guy in his late 20s, I would say. And yeah, it's very good. This particular volume I don't think followed the protagonist. I'm pretty sure it was this volume followed some other people, some other survivors in a different part of Japan. Very good volume. Can't wait to read the next one. This is always an amazing read. But that's what I started off with. Next, I read volumes 2 through 6. So I finished reading Sunny. This is a series about a bunch of orphans in a group home, and they have this car that they call Sunny that they go and they kind of have imaginative journeys in. The car doesn't actually move; it's just a junkyard car, but it's about their lives. They're all kind of elementary school age, and you find out kind of about their family situations, why they ended up in this group home, and yeah, it's them just kind of living day-to-day life in this group home. It's quite sad, it's quite emotional, it's lighthearted at times. This is Taiyo Matsumoto. If you've read anything by him, then you know kind of what you're getting into with this. I will be making a separate video on this series. It was really, really good. So I had read volume 1 previously, so I read volumes 2 through 6 and finished that off. Next, another series I finished off, Saturn Apartments. I read volumes 6 and 7, and that just finishes off the series. I had been wanting to read this for a while, and I finally finished it. Really enjoyed it. I will probably make a video about this series as well. Yeah, it was pretty good. And this is about Earth is no longer inhabitable. There's a ring that humans have made around Earth, and people live on that ring, and it follows this main character here, who he is a window washer. So he's got kind of a dangerous job of going out on the outer ring and washing windows for the rich kind of clients. Next, for the challenge of read something that's been on your TBR the longest, I read Red Blinds the Foolish. This is by SM, I guess. This is a yaoi short story compilation volume that I've had for a year and a half, almost 2 years maybe now, that I never got around to reading. This has been on my TBR since I bought it and had never picked it up. So I decided to read it. I enjoyed it, not as much as Tableau Numero 20, which I own also by the same author, but it was pretty good. The main title story is about a bullfighter and this guy that loves him. But yeah, it was a short story collection. It was pretty good. Next, for the challenge of reading the shortest volume or shortest manga in your collection, I chose La Quinta Camera, The Fifth Room by Natsume Ono. This is about a group of 4 middle-aged men that live in an apartment, and they rent out their 5th room to foreign exchange students. This takes place in Italy, as a lot of Natsume Ono's works do. Yeah, it is very episodic. The stories do kind of connect though, and the main character is a female who is the first guest. Well, not the first guest of theirs, but the first that we see in this volume. And then she kind of still hangs around with them afterward. while they still are renting out their room to different people. Um, Very good story about friendship and kind of moving on with your life. These guys aren't in their 20s, they're in their 30s and possibly 40s. Um, they're, it's a different part of life than I've experienced in my 20s, right? But it is very, very good. I highly, highly recommend reading it. It's just fun. It's really, really sweet. It's a very good story about friendship and, um, yeah, and it's Natsume Ono, which you should just pick up her work anyway. Next, for reading a recommended title, I picked Kingyo Used Books because Laura has recommended this many times. This is this is an episodic series about a used manga bookstore, and each story kind of follows a different person, like discovering manga or rediscovering manga through this bookstore. At every point, this random character will end up at the bookstore, Kingyo Used Books, and it's very heartwarming. And as Laura said, if you love manga, you should read this. The best thing about this is all of in the margins, anytime a manga is referenced, because it references real manga, it gives you the history of that manga. It tells you, the title, the author, when it was written, what it's about. And then in the back as well, there's also some more information about each kind of title that is mainly referenced. So it's really, really good. So I read volume 1. Then for a title that is out of my comfort zone, I read Trigun. This is volume 1. I picked this up used a long time ago. Never read it because it doesn't interest me. The back says, Deep Space Planet Future Gun Action. None of those words appeal to me. So I figured this was a good one to read for the one that put me, or read something out of my comfort zone. I don't know what happened in this, honestly. I was reading it and I just was like, I chuckled a few times. Don't ask me at what, I don't remember. I don't own volume 2, I just own volume 1, and it was okay. It's not my thing. So I'm glad I finally read it because it's been on my shelf for a while, but I think I paid $1 for it, and that is all it's worth to me. I don't really care much about it. Next, I read Horimiya Volume 11. This came in the mail. I pre-ordered this, and I don't even know if it's actually out yet technically. But this came like really early from the release date, and it came a few days before the manga readathon, and I was gonna read it, and I said I'll save it. I love Horimiya. It's so much fun. It's a shonen romance, and it is amazing. If you have not started reading this, I highly recommend it. It's so funny. And it was a good way to end my first day of the readathon because I read so much, and then this was a good way to just laugh everything off. Yeah, it's really, really adorable and funny. And I guess this technically counted as my catch up read up to the most recently released volume because this is the most recently released volume. So that was just the first day. The second day, the 18th, I started with the Devilman Classic Collection. This is the hardcover that was just released by 7 Seas. Yeah, this is pretty thick. I believe it's about 2.5 volumes in length. And this is, I can't really show you inside. There's a lot of nudity. Yeah, I mean, I watched the Devilman Crybaby on Netflix, and I knew this was coming out before I watched the anime, and I was interested in picking this up. After watching Devilman Crybaby, I absolutely need to pick this up. Can't wait for the second volume, and that'll be all of it. There's just 2 of these big hardcover omnibus editions, but this was a lot of fun to read. Very, very good. Highly recommend picking it up. And even just owning it. This is a nice release by 7 Seas. This is a really, really nice hardcover. There are like over 30 color pages in this book. I counted them. I believe there's 31. It's really, really good. I'm super impressed with this. Can't wait to read the second one. So that's how I started my second day. This is going to get really tough to move these books around. Okay, next. Another new title, I read Volume 1 of Dead Dead Demons Destruction by Inio Asano. This is the first volume. I believe volume 2 is out already. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about this right now, but I did read this. Next, I read Tokyo Ghoul Re volumes 3 and 4. Yeah, it is what it is. That's what I read. And then I read another Natsume Ono title, Not Simple. This is amazing. I love this title. It is very uncomfortable to read. It is not a happy title by any means. It's hard to describe this. Basically, this boy Ian is looking for his sister, and he's going across the United States trying to find his sister. He meets this novelist, this writer who wants to write about Ian's life because his life is so unbelievably terrible that he says like that you can't make this stuff up. There's no way. Yeah, it's very sad. It is absolutely wonderful though. I love this series. I love this title. It is just a one shot, and it's very emotional. I had read this before. Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad I reread that. I read King Gyo-Yu's Books Volume 2, just continuing from the first volume, and those are the only two I read. I do own all 4 that have been released in English, but I didn't want to read all of them at once just because I want to savor this. It is very good, and I didn't want to just rush through it all for the sake of a readathon. So I only read the first 2 for the readathon, but I will absolutely read the next 2 that I own at some point soon. Then I read Special A Volume 10. Before the readathon started, I was making my way through rereading this series, so I just felt like reading Special A in that moment and read Volume 10. Next, on the 19th, I read Scum's Wish Volume 5. This is kind of it's a story about unrequited love and people using other people in a lustful way just for the sake of the fact that they're lonely and they want someone else. They want a warm body basically because they can't have the person they want. So it's about a bunch of different characters using people for selfish reasons. It's pretty good. I liked the anime, so I started buying the manga. These are very expensive, so this is the only volume I have up to currently. But yeah, I just felt like catching up to where I owned. So I read Volume 5. I don't know where to put all this stuff. Okay. And then I reread volumes 1 through 7, which is the most recently released volume of Happiness. I've read Happiness now. It's not complete yet, but I've read it probably 3 or 4 times. I love Shuzo Oshimi. I love this series so far. This recently came out and I read it, and then I wanted to reread everything and kind of go back from the beginning to catch things that I missed because this volume is very interesting. So yeah, I'm glad I reread it. I love this series. Can't wait till the next one comes out. I believe it comes out in October. But yeah, I just read all 7 volumes that are currently out of Happiness. And then on the 20th, I started off with the newest released Tokyo Ghoul Re Volume 5. So that puts me up to date with the catch-up on a series to the most recently released volume, because I was a few volumes behind with this. Yeah, again, not much to say about Tokyo Ghoul Re. Then I reread Nijigahara Holograph. This is a big hardcover by Fantagraphics Books. This is another Inyo Asano title. I have read this in the past. I really, really enjoyed it in the past, but it is very difficult to keep up with. I can't really say much about it. It's a lot of intertwining past and present story to try and figure out what's going on. So rereading this is a good idea so that you actually catch the things you missed the first time. I will have to reread this probably multiple more times to fully understand what happened. But yes, I did reread Nijigahara Holograph. And then I also reread Scumbag Loser. And this is kind of a monster horror weird story. Um, it's disturbing. It's gross. I mean, you can probably see from the cover whether or not you want to read this. It's good. I've read it twice now. I like it, but I didn't like it as much this time as I did the first time. But I am glad that I own it. And then again, I've already read Durarara in the past, but this is volume 1 of the first arc. I read that. And then on the 21st, I read. There's 10 volumes of the first that encompass the first 3 arcs of Durarara, the originally released manga. They have started releasing the next arc recently, years and years after these ones all finished. So this is volume 2, 3, and 4 of the first arc. If you don't know what this is about, the story takes place in Ikebukuro in Tokyo, and it is a fantastical story about a bunch of different myths, legends, gangs, and everything under the sun takes place. It's violent, it's character driven, very, very well done. So that's the 3 volumes of the next arc, and then the final arc, the Yellow Scarves arc. Those are the 2. So I read volumes 2 through 9 on the 21st. I really love this manga. I hadn't read it in a very long time. I watched the anime a couple times in the past. I really wanted to just reconsume the story, and I'm glad I did. I had a lot of fun with it. And then I didn't read anything on the 22nd. I was very busy that day. And then on the 23rd, the final day, I read the final volume, volume 10, or volume 3 of the 3rd arc of Durarara. Again, really, really, really loved this. I will be making a video about this series for sure. And then I read Inuyashiki again. I had read this in the past, so I read all 10 volumes. I just wanted to reread it all at once because I kind of read it as it was coming out. But yeah, this is a very fast read. These volumes some of them only take like 9 minutes to read because there's so much. It's mostly art-based. There's not a lot of dialogue in a lot of them. I will probably be making a video about this series as well, if you don't already know what it is. But yeah, that's what I read. It's by the guy who did Gantz, Hiroya Oku. It's a sci-fi story about these 2 now superhumans, and one chooses to do good and one chooses to do bad things. So yeah, it's pretty good though. I really enjoyed it. Then I needed something lighthearted after all of that negative stuff. I read volume 6 of My Neighbor Seki. I have made a video about this in the past, so go check it out. This is just a episodic, fun, really, really funny story about 2 desk mates, and this guy, Seki, always is playing with something or doing something ridiculous, and his desk neighbor constantly gets distracted. Then I read just some more Special A, because I was already reading it to begin with. And I will be making a video about this. I think I have 1 more volume to read, but I read up to volume 15 yesterday at the end of the readathon. So yeah, in total, 57 books. Really, really impressed with myself. I did not think that I was going to read that much. I planned to read 20. So yeah, thank you again, Laura and Jen, for hosting this. And I'm pretty sure that I didn't mention all of the different challenges, the 7 that were laid out, but I did absolutely complete all of them. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I read a lot of manga, and thanks again. Thank you for watching. Look out for some videos about some of these series that'll be coming up, and yeah, thanks for watching. See ya.